Today, the iPhone 12, the iPhone 12 Pro, and the iPhone 12 Max all launch. I'm actually gonna go pick mine up in about an hour. But Apple this year made three very distinct phones. All three phones are different, making it a bit confusing. And a lot of you have reached out saying, what are the differences? Do the differences actually matter? And which one are you getting? So today I'm gonna break down the main differences between the three phones and hopefully help you choose which one makes the most sense for you. If this video helps you guys out, hit the like button. Maybe you think about subscribing to this channel and maybe head to the merch shop. First link in the description, pick yourself up a t-shirt. All right, so Apple's new phones are here. There's the iPhone 12, 12 Pro, and 12 Pro Max. And while the Pros both carry that Pro moniker, they're also different from each other. So we actually have three totally different phones this year. So before we dive into the differences between the three phones, let's go over the similarities. What do all three phones have in common? So no matter which phone you get all of this. Well, first up is 5G, and everyone's been talking about 5G. We've been wanting 5G for a very long time. Even our old phones fake like they're 5G. They'll say 5GE. That's not real 5G. The new phones will support real 5G speed. And if you don't know much about 5G, it basically just means that you're gonna be able to download and upload things from the internet very, very fast. Of course, that'll depend on your service carrier, but as service carriers put 5G in more areas, we're gonna know an internet like we didn't really know before. But we'll talk about that more later. Also, all three phones have that new squared off design, which isn't really new. It's more of a revert to the iPhone 5, I think it was, with the fully flat sides. You could stand your phone up on its tail or on its side, and it was great. That squared off iPhone design is by far my favorite iPhone design. I'm actually super bummed for when 2 or 3 years down the road, they're gonna try to convince us again that rounded sides is what's hot now. Apple, just keep the sides squared off. We like that design. Next up for all three phones is Apple's Super Retina XDR display, which is incredible. But all three phones share the same pixel density. So you're not gonna see a difference between the three phones in screen quality, but you will see a difference in that the iPhone 12 and iPhone 12 Pro both share a 6.1-inch screen, while the 12 Pro Max has a 6.7-inch screen, which is huge. The other differences with the screen is that while the 12 can put out 625 nits, the Pro models, both of them can put out 800 nits, which means the Pro phones are gonna be brighter in sunlight conditions. So, you know, when you're like super sunny and you're like, I can barely see my phone, well, the Pro models are putting out much more light. They're much brighter screens so that they'll be better in bright sunlight. And then lastly on that display is Apple's new ceramic glass coating, which supposedly is gonna make the glass stronger, which I hope so. If you can see, I just broke the glass on my iPhone 11 Pro. I'm trying to turn this in an hour, but now the glass is broken because it didn't have ceramic coating. So hopefully that ceramic coating really is as strong as they say. I feel like every year they say the glass coating is stronger. They say the glass is more flexible. It won't break as easily. And then I break a phone. All right, next up and massive here is Apple's new A14 chip will be in all three phones. And this chip is so good. It's Apple's own design. They're not going out to a third party to make their chips anymore for phones. This is the A14 chip that can do 11 trillion operations per second. And Apple's chips are the reason that iPhones are taking such incredible photos these days, they're taking such incredible video, is because that chip, that processing power, is able to do so much to a photo and a video the moment that you hit the shutter button. When I take a photo on one of my big Sony cameras, the idea of those cameras is just, I'm telling the camera, capture as much information as you can, don't do anything to it, I'll do everything in post. When you take a photo on your iPhone, the iPhone is taking a photo, but it's also reading the scene. It's doing all sorts of computational photography to understand the scene and create an image from that. Which is why sometimes you look at an iPhone photo and you go, that's really good. And then lastly on all three of these phones, and something that while watching the keynote made me so excited, is Dolby Vision HDR video on all three phones. Now the iPhone 12 can only do that up to 30 frames a second, while both Pro models will be able to do it up to 60 frames a second. I'll get into the specifics of Dolby Vision HDR, how that all works in a future video once I actually have my phone in my hands. But for now, just know that the incredible video that you're already getting out of your iPhones, it's about to be a lot better. And those are the main features that are on all three phones. No matter which one you go for, you get all of that. So you kind of can't lose this year. But what's different? Why did I say all three phones are unique? All three phones are different from each other. First up is the price. The iPhone 12 with that 6.1-inch screen starts at $799, which is kind of a deal these days. It's kind of crazy that we say that $800 is a deal or that's the cheap model for a cell phone these days, but they're not so much cell phones anymore as they are personal computers in our pockets. Again, 11 trillion operations per second on that A14 chip. That's crazy. So $799 starting for that iPhone 12, $999 for the iPhone 12 Pro, and $1099 for the 12 Pro Max. And there's all sorts of configurations with hard drives. The iPhone 12 starts at 64 gigabytes, the iPhone 12 Pro starts at 128 gigabytes, and the Pro Max also starts at 128 gigabytes. So if you take the 12 and you bump it to 128 gigabytes, it puts it at 850. So then the difference between the 12 and the 12 Pro at the same configurations, space-wise, is only $150 difference. And as we go along here, you can decide whether that $150 jump makes sense for you. Another big physical difference between the phones is that the 12 is gonna have an aluminum body, while the 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max are both gonna have stainless steel bodies, which is gonna make them a little sturdier, a little heavier as well, but more rigid, and they should be more durable. But finally, we get to what matters the most, and it's the cameras. And all three phones have different camera system setups. First up with the iPhone 12, we have those two cameras on there, a wide and an ultra wide. So the iPhone 12 does not have that telephoto lens. The wide lens is at f1.6, and the ultra wide lens is at f2.4, which is pretty good. Again, the 2.4, the wide lens, not great in low light. The wide lens, pretty good in low light. 1.6 is pretty awesome for a little tiny cell phone. And then next up, we jump to the iPhone 12 Pro, which has the three cameras. It has the ultra wide, it has the wide, and it has the telephoto. And not much has changed here. All three are the same cameras as last year on the iPhone 11 Pro, with the ultra wide 0.5 zoom at f2.4, the wide still staying at that f1.6, and then the telephoto at f2.0. So from iPhone 11 Pro to iPhone 12 Pro, no difference in camera systems. So where do we see the big upgrades? It's on the 12 Pro Max. It's kind of where Apple put all of their new camera system. They put it in just the Max. It has that ultra wide, the wide, and the telephoto, but now the telephoto has gone from 2x zoom to 2.5x zoom, which gives you a 65mm equivalent, which is really good for a telephoto on a teeny tiny camera like this. The only bummer about that telephoto is that it does drop from f2 to f2.2, which isn't a massive difference, but you will notice that in low light situations. But the biggest difference you're gonna see with that 12 Pro Max is they actually increased the sensor size 47%. It's a larger sensor on that camera, which means better low light performance. Apple claims up to 87% better low light performance. And then on top of that, with the Pro Max, they added in something called sensor shift, which basically they are now physically stabilizing the sensor in the camera, which is something that we see on like the bigger Sonys and the newer Canons. Instead of only doing digital stabilization or optical stabilization, they're actually taking the sensor and they're stabilizing the sensor for you, which is gonna give you steadier shots and better low light performance. So when it's lower light and the shutter is a little bit longer, you're gonna be able to hold the camera steadier because that's in there. And again, the bigger sensor, the sensor shift technology, the new telephoto lens is only available on the Max phone. It's not available on the 12 Pro, only the 12 Pro Max, which bums me out because last year I got the 11 Pro Max or whatever the big one was called last year, and it's too big. This is too much phone for me. It's too much in my pocket, my hand. I have to put a pop socket on it to really use it properly. I was really hoping that they would keep the same format where both the Pro cameras were the same thing, just the size was different. I'm super bummed about that, and it's making my choice between the 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max more difficult. Alright, another feature that's on the Pro models and does not appear on the 12 is Lidar. Lidar on our phones. And this is the main feature that I think makes sense to move from the 12 to the Pro models. And while Lidar is exciting because I know that Apple is gonna be betting big on augmented reality in the future, basically what Lidar does is it shoots a bunch of lasers around a room, it maps the room so that the phone can understand its environment, which in the future, Apple can use to do cool things with augmented reality, like maybe a pair of Apple glasses. That would be nice. And again, while I think Apple's gonna be focusing on augmented reality in the next couple of years, right now they're bringing Lidar into the picture by letting us use it as an autofocus system in the dark. Lidar can autofocus in the dark. It can see when there's no light and still be able to focus an image, so I can take that long night mode shutter. Sony, why don't I have Lidar on my $4,500 A7S III? That's like the most genius thing ever. Put Lidar in your camera. It can see at night. It can focus at night. That's real exciting. And then the last major feature that's different between the 12 and the 2 Pro models, and again, something that I'm super excited about, but it will not be available today. It won't be available when you start getting your phone. It'll be a month or two down the road here, is Apple's new photo file type called Apple ProRAW. And this file type is kind of takes the best of both worlds from RAW photography and JPEG photography and kind of smashes them together. If you don't know a ton about RAW and JPEG photos, RAW is what professionals shoot. Again, my big camera back there, I'm telling my camera, just take a photo. I want as much information as you can capture. I'll do all the processing in post. So when I come home with a RAW photo, it actually looks quite flat. It looks faded. It doesn't have a lot of saturation. It doesn't have a lot of sharpness. But when I pull it into Lightroom or another editing program, there's a ton of latitude. If the photo is too dark, I can really boost up those shadows. If it's too bright, I can really pull down those highlights. I have a lot of editability because I've captured so much information. Where on the other side, a JPEG is basically you telling your camera, take a photo, and I want you to read the scene the best you can, process it for me, compress it into a smaller file size, and it's kind of ready to go. Or it's much closer ready to go than a RAW file is. But when I take that JPEG onto my computer, I can't move it around as much. If it's underexposed, boosting it is gonna bring in a lot of noise in those shadows. If it's overexposed and things have gone white in the highlights, they're just gone. Well, with all of the computational power of the new A14 chip in the iPhone 12 Pro models, they wanna be able to do both at the same time. So you're gonna be able to take a photo, it's gonna process it and make it look ready to go, but you could also take that photo onto your computer later and have the same flexibility, the same movement in the highlights and the shadows and all the editability of a RAW image in basically a JPEG. I hope that makes sense. I'll make a whole video once Apple ProRAW actually comes out explaining it, if it is as cool as I think it's gonna be. Because I think Apple ProRAW might be the feature, the killer feature that I'm most excited about for these new phones. Over sensor shift, over a larger sensor, the Apple ProRAW might be the most game-changing piece of photography on these new phones. And again, it will not be available when you first get your phone, it will come later, and it will not be available on the iPhone 12, only the 12 Pro and 12 Pro Max. Whew, okay, that was a lot. We broke down the similarities, we broke down the differences, so which phone am I gonna pick up? The 12 Pro. That's it. Just the 12 Pro. I'm not gonna go for the 12 Pro Max, even though it has that larger sensor. It has the sensor shift. Apple really spent the time to put all of their photography and computational know-how into the bigger model. The thing is, iPhones, it's still something I have to live with. It's still something I have to put in my pocket. I have to deal with the size on a daily basis. And while the larger screen is amazing and it's incredible to go, whoa, look at this big screen. For me, holding a big phone, using a big phone, just even taking photos with it, it's so big, it's so bulky. I would prefer having a few less features, go with the 12 Pro, count on the fact that Apple's ProRAW is gonna come out and almost negate the differences between the two. Again, I'll explain more on that when Apple ProRAW actually comes out, but yeah, for me, I'm going 12 Pro. Let me know what you guys are gonna do in the comments below. Are you just gonna go for the 12? Are you going for the 12 Pro? Or are you a big-handed person and you're going for the 12 Pro Max? Or maybe you have normal size hands and you're like, I like the big phone. I like having a giant brick of a phone in my pocket. Even when I have it in my pocket like this, if I'm sitting, it hits my hip. It's too big. It's too big of a phone. I'm getting rid of it. All right, I'm gonna go pick up my phone like right now. You let me know in the comments below which phone you're gonna get. I hope this helped. If it did, hit that like button. See you guys later.